This is Prop 125. So Prop 125 has a lot of people that are voting for it and a lot of people that are voting against it. And we felt this was one of the ones that really would be people would be most curious about. So we have two retired corrections officers that are going to speak about. So Scott and Eric are going to talk to us about Prop 125.
Hi, I'm Scott Simmons. I'm a retired sergeant from the Pima County Sheriff's Department Corrections Division. Also, I was a registered lobbyist for 12 years. I know quite a bit of the ins and outs of our retirement systems. And the legislature in the past decade or so has done nothing but take away the benefits that corrections officers fought hard to get. And this is under, you have no idea how hard a job this is, for one. I've got a severe back injury, two torn rotator cuffs. I've had to have knee surgery. It's not a fun place, but you stick it out because your light at the end of the tunnel is a retirement system, a guaranteed retirement system. But that no longer exists. As of July 1st, the legislature thought it'd be a good idea to take away the opportunity for corrections officers to join their own retirement system, Corrections Officer Retirement Plan. They closed it to the new officers. The ones that are still left in there are people that are in a gray area of affiliation, like probation officers, cooks and janitors at the DOC, which makes no sense. Instead, they put the corrections officers into a 401k, and to make it more ludicrous, the turnover rate is 36 months. So they changed our strategy. What used to be, we had a vestment of 10 years to try to get people, okay, if you're at the 10-year mark, then you're halfway home to the 20-year retirement, right? So it kept a lot of people around. Well, Senator Debbie Lesko thought it was a good idea to change 100% vestment to 36 months because that would match the turnover rate. So this is the kind of thinking that's going on at the legislature. And she made the statement on file, it's on file, it's on videotape if you want to look it up, 2017, the Senate Finance meeting, that corrections officers retire making $100,000 a year. I was a sergeant. I retired making about $50,000 after almost 27 years. There's only been one person in the system, and it was probably a warden that retired making $100,000. One. So you can't really use that as an example. I think from what I remember, it's more like around 38,000 average.
Actually, it's 28,000 according to this state website.
Oh, 28.
28.5 is what the average is, which is the lowest paid in Arizona.
So they've continued to chip away at everything that we have, and now those of us that are retired, and we retired under this law that protected our retirement system, Prop 100, which was some years ago, but what it states is that they can't take away or diminish any benefits we have unless it goes to the voters. And that's why this is a proposition. This is why the legislature was unable to change it on their own, because in fact it is diminishing part of our retirement benefit. And to briefly explain the retirement benefit, corrections, our money goes into a fund. It's invested, and if that fund annually exceeds 9%, we're able to get 1% of that. We basically get 0.5%, and then the state gets the fund gets the rest of it. And it's not costing the taxpayers anything. It has nothing, zero, to do with the general fund. However, we can get up to 4% if it's a good year. and it's called a PBI, permanent benefit increase. They like to call it a COLA, but it's not a COLA because COLAs are given out. This is earned. This is like as if you had a private savings account and they said, we're going to give you, part of half of over 9%. And then all of a sudden they said, no, we changed our mind, even though you worked half your life there. It's no good anymore. So what this proposition is doing is changing from something that costs the taxpayer nothing, no impact on the general fund, to tying it to the Phoenix Mesa cost of living index. And the maximum we can get there is 2%. So they have cut us from a possibility of 4% increase in our retirement to a maximum of 2%, and only if there's inflation. And so that's the predicament that we're in. So we're asking you to vote no. And I'll hand it over to Eric.
Hello.
He has to turn his button off.
I'll turn it off.
My name is Eric Hann. I'm also a retired Pima County Corrections Officer. Tonight I'm representing the Process Servers Association of Arizona. We are asking everybody to vote no on this. This law also affects retired judges and cuts their cost of living in half, also just like Scott said with the corrections officers. The one thing to realize, there's been a lot of misinformation from the retirement people saying it's going to save, if you vote yes on this, it's going to save Arizona $326 million over the next 30 years. That's not true. Under the current law, the investment fund has to make 9%. Then corrections officers and judges share a part of that next 0.5% till they get their cost of living. Then it's stopped, and the extra money over that still goes into the fund. So if you have a good year, like 20% one year, it might actually fund cost of living increase, PBIs for 2 to 3 years. The main thing about this to think of is, as Scott said, it's a benefit. It gets people to stay in one of the worst jobs in law enforcement. Judges aren't the worst laws. They got a good thing, but corrections officers, look at, it talked about last week in the newspaper how there's 936 openings into the State Department of Corrections just in Arizona. So those people are working like 20, 30 hours a week overtime. Pima County Jail with Sheriff Napier, he has 100 open positions for a corrections officer. They had their first part-time academy. You can go work there now and get $25 an hour and work unlimited overtime with no benefits if you want, because they can't get people there. You have 45 supervisors working as corrections officers just to keep the place safe. Because of this change, there's no good retirement anymore. Nobody's going to want to work there. Our cost base is going up. 3/4 of the entire Pima County Sheriff's Department budget is going to corrections officer overtime due to understaffing because nobody wants the job. 2 weeks ago, they pulled 12 deputies off the street, threw them in the courthouse, and then threw the court 12 corrections officers over there to try and start evening it out. So by voting no, you can, hopefully it will save money in the long term because you're going to have long-term employees. One corrections officer to train them, if they quit in 3 years, is $50,000 is what you pay as taxpayers to train a corrections officer in Pima County, Arizona. DOC is about 40. Every time one of those guys quits every 3 years, you're repaying it. So that's why we're asking you to vote no on this tonight, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
First off, on 125, and I understand what you guys are saying, and there's a lot of resentment against the way that they've been trying to go after your retirement and the corrections officers in particular. There was a previous bill that has nothing to do with this initiative, which I voted against, and was able to be to switch you from a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan. That was bad. You do have a problem retaining people. You do have problems. You need to make sure you have the best possible retirement program. The problem is that, and this isn't just corrections officers' retirement that this deals with, but also EORP, the elected officials' retirement plan. The main driver of the elected officials' retirement plan is judges. They get paid a heck of a lot of money. And the EORP plan gets you a percentage of your last salary. So if you're getting a six-figure salary and you're getting a percentage of that, that's a lot. The problem is it's not adequately funded. Whenever you've got a retirement plan, you have to be funded at a level where it's not eating into its principal. EORP is at 26% funded right now. It's going bankrupt. It won't be there in a few years if we don't do something. And the corrections officer's retirement plan isn't much better. It's not. I don't have the exact number for the corrections officer's one. I think it's at 40-something or something along those ways. Yeah. Yeah, so it's having trouble too, and that comes from multiple places. But the problem is we find ourselves here in this mess. I agree, we shouldn't be converting existing people from defined benefit to defined contribution. We shouldn't be doing new employees either, because we got to get new people in there. But that is not this initiative. This initiative does one thing. It allows, it limits the amount of increase each year to cost of living instead of a percentage of what you get. Because the problem is you may have a good year one year in your investment, but then you may lose money the next year, as we've seen over and over again, and that eats into what you've got. And the people who have to make up that extra difference are cities and counties. And they've got troubles with their own budgets as well. So this is one simple one simple way we could fix this and help make it a little more healthy so that these retirement systems stay around. Because it doesn't matter if you get 2% more cost of living increase if there's no money to pay you from. You're going to lose the whole thing. So you got to find a way of dealing with these pension crises. That's why this was a consensus bill that was reached with the leaders of the corrections union. Yeah. Well, they were involved in this process, as was the EORP, and this was a whole thing. Well, that was our understanding as the legislature, and the entire legislature voted unanimously in favor of this solution. Okay, well, it may have been they may not have been representing your specific union, but there were other aspects of the correctional officers who were being represented by those folks at the time in these conversations. It's a hard thing. You don't want to take away anything from anybody, but these are things which is just the foregoing of a possible future retirement increase, which was not being received most years anyway. But if we can do that, it will help make the whole thing healthier in the long run and save the cities and counties money. So I would urge you that this is a small thing we can do to keep our pension system healthier before they end up being a complete disaster and we're washed out on it.
Yeah, here.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
Is it working? Okay. My question is, for years we have not had good returns, so we have not had any increases.
Right.
With the cost of living, and this may very well turn out to be in our best interest monetarily. Yeah. But if it is, and you're already complaining about how it's going to affect the system we're in now, negatively affects cities and counties, where are you going to get the money for the 2% when we do get raises from the Phoenix cost of living index? Who's going to pay for that? Is it going to be the county and cities?
As explained by some of the unions who were involved in this conversation, is that amount of money that would be, this doesn't solve the whole problem. We still got issues and we still got to deal with this. Our pensions are in a crisis at every level right now. We need to make sure they're healthy. This is just one thing we can do to stop the bleeding right now. So it doesn't fix the whole problem.
No, but I'm asking you, where does this 2% come from?
Well, the hope is that we get over 2%. And then when that money gets over 2% and we don't give away 4%, then that additional money goes to make up for the bad years.
Oh, can I add something? Yeah.
Sure.
My understanding, Steve chimed in, but so I was the ranking Democrat on the Banking and Insurance Committee, and my understanding is the way our pensions, every single pension's set up, and we've been going pension by pension, reforming it through the voters, because the voters ultimately have to approve it. But the permanent benefit increase was passed in the 1980s without accurate analysis of what that would mean for the pensions long term. And so when we had the crash after, the 2011 tech bubble, and we had the crash there, and then most recently in the 2008 financial crisis, retirees, which in a perfect world still got that permanent benefit increase, even though the pension fund, and I'm thinking PSPRS, but I'm thinking it's true for core EOR.
It's not.
Maybe it's not.
Different calculations for core.
Okay.
Because I wrote the calculations for core.
Okay, so they didn't get the PDI when
No.
the pension funds were losing $1 billion, or?
Theirs was based on a lump sum. Each policeman or fireman got approximately $150, where ours was based on a percent, and it had to be based on how many years you worked. The reason I wrote it this way is so that it wouldn't deplete the fund. So it would be fair to somebody that worked, say, 25 years versus a guy that at age 62 worked 10 years, wouldn't get the same raise. It was based on what your retirement. Whereas PSPRS, no matter how many years you put in with PSPRS, you got the lump sum. That's why their system went down much quicker than ours.
So thank you for clarifying.
So you've heard a lot more about pensions than you ever signed up to hear. And you get the gold star on your way out to be able to hear about that. But we'll be hearing a lot more of them in the future, whether you want to hear it or not, because they are in some major crisis, and there's a lot more things we're going to be able to do to be able to make sure that we hire good people and get people to be able to do the tough jobs.